Thank you for coming. I at least had some questions, but I appreciate you coming for sure. And we gave you the baseline of questioning beforehand. And I do know that my intent was to have the president as well as the chancellor come to discuss some of the things. But to the extent that you can, answer at least the questions with regard to campus climate. I think I misspoke and said campus safety. That's a different issue that I want to speak with the president and chancellor about, and we'll have them at the hearing in October. And committee, if you have any questions, just, I'll get you in. But you could go ahead and start, and then we can go from there.
Sure, yeah. Campus climate is an important issue. Part and parcel of my role has been engaged in diversity and inclusion work for the system at NMU, just as background. And I was asked to initially come in and kind of chart a path forward for the institution, particularly given the events of the fall of 2015. Part of that had campus climate built into it, and so it was a kind of thinking about it from a strategic framework that connected diversity, inclusion, and equity to different aspects of organizational functioning. So there hadn't been, at least heretofore, a kind of strategic, metric-driven approach to really approaching these issues and unpacking, determining a baseline and then unpacking some of the issues that had come to light. And so we did that. This took this past year to really engage the community in. I guess one of the first things that I saw coming in was important conversations with our constituency, particularly our students, who said, there was really a lack of engagement they felt on administration's part, and that they had really been trying to have these conversations for a few years and to no avail. And so I took the time to really engage the community, be accessible, be visible, determine what they thought some of the issues were, but actually utilize that feedback into this development of the strategic plan. And so we call it our Inclusive Excellence Framework. The 5 areas of organizational function that we focus on are access and success for faculty, staff, and students, campus climate and intergroup relations, which clearly is one of the important subject matters for today. Education and scholarship, this notion of graduating our students to a global marketplace and making sure we have curricular and co-curricular activities that are reflective of that. Our institutional infrastructure, looking at our policies, our processes, our practices, and making sure that they are meaningfully connected to diversity and inclusion. And then our community engagement. One of the things we've heard, particularly on MU's campus, was that there was this kind of divide between the institution and the town gown, and there were opportunities to really build relationships there. So we took the time, we spoke with faculty, staff, students, administrators, alumni, local community members, to garner their input and identify and develop the plan. And we're at the stage now of ultimately capturing data to give us a baseline. So we have goals, objectives, strategies, and indicators for each segment of those plans. And then we're capturing the baseline data from our academic and administrative units to see where we are and ultimately identify those strategies that are working and those that are not working, to identify where to best put our resources. And so we have a request for the submission of those at the end of October. And it's a system-wide effort, and so we asked all the campuses to complete this task. UMKC had been, I think, one of the first to kind of lead the effort with regard to this type of framework, but all the campuses are on board, and so we're utilizing that. At the same time, when I came in, there was a campus climate survey that was done at all the campuses and the system to collect some baseline data on the perceptions, the lived experiences of some of the constituency. That data took the year to be analyzed and was actually rolled out this fall on all of the campuses. So we all had town halls in which the consulting firm that we contracted with to do the campus climate survey came in and shared the results with the community. Not surprising, one of the biggest factors kind of impacting perceptions is notion of a sense of belonging. We hear a lot with regard to the literature around students. as applicable for faculty and staff. The sense of belonging, the sense of community, an opportunity to create a greater connection that can ultimately impact retention for our constituency. And so each campus is utilizing that data to identify how to move forward. Many of them are either identifying committees, doing additional focus groups to analyze the data. I know at MU, there are committees that have been established for students, faculty, and staff. We've gotten feedback from our, yes, sir.
Question. How long is it going to take for all of it to get implemented? I know UMKC, like you stated, started off that, but it's still nothing implemented that makes so-called minority children feel inclusive of the school as far as authors, different literature and things that they're presenting
in the curriculum.
They the same monolithic Western philosophy, regardless of study. So just a question, how long will it?
No, it's a good point. So kind of utilizing the baseline I have from my arrival, having been there a year, what we're trying to do is utilize I think what is an important process. So we have funding at the system that was put in place by the Board of Curators subsequent to the protest. And what I'm ultimately utilizing that funding for is in this metric-driven approach to take this time, once the campus plans have been submitted in the end of October, there is an advisory council of faculty, staff, and students that are going to review those plans, provide some critique of them, but also identify how those funds are going to be distributed to ultimately impact some of the strategies that have been provided by the campuses and the plans that they're submitting. So we'll have that for the rest of this.
Last question.
Yep.
How much influence does the professors have over the doctorate students coming in?
Yeah.
That would go to the heart of.
Yeah, you're talking about really curricular transformation, right? That's part and parcel of this effort. So that's under education and scholarship. No, but it's an important work. I mean, it's important to kind of represent curricula that are infusing diversity in it. The research is really clear. This is what business and industry is looking for. When I was at Virginia Tech, we had companies that stopped their recruiting efforts because they didn't think the students were coming out with the multicultural competencies that impact the bottom line of the organization. So that's the same argument that I made here. We're actually trying to incentivize that. So I have a faculty fellow at the MU's campus that is really there solely to ultimately identify curricular transformation efforts. We're providing funding to faculty to transform their curriculum, and we're utilizing this as incentive at the system level to impact the other campuses as well. MU doesn't have a center for teaching and learning, much to my chagrin. The other campuses do, and so they actually have a leg up with regard to a unit that you can incentivize and get faculty there. So we're trying to do this a different way. It's top of mind. We have that built into the plan, and I look forward to reporting back to you as soon as we disseminate the funding to say, okay, this is how we're going to impact it.
I'm really curious about that aspect.
It's a great point.
Yeah.
Really good. Yeah.
I'm through. I'm just curious.
Yeah, so he took us in a different direction, but you brought up some points. The campus climate study, I participated in it when I was a student. It's done ever so often, and I'm assuming that the results are likely the same and nothing changes. And you have the position. I wanted to talk to you. I just wanted to talk to the president as well, because when we were pushing, or I guess when I was pushing the interim president to set the standard for the next 25 years, the board came back and put it off on the new president. So now you're in the position, and I'm assuming that what percentage of dealing with the aftermath and the path for moving forward from the Mizzou protest from the system level was delegated to you?
I mean, on some level, I'll be clear, I think a good amount with regard to this kind of strategic path forward and this engagement path forward, but I've also been pretty quick to say this is a shared responsibility. I'm not a savior for this work. I think I'm quick to understand, having had some experiences at other institutions, that we have to be strategic. We have to move forward. We can't be mired in rhetoric. It has to be action with these communities. And I think we have a president in place and a new chancellor at MU in particular who are committed to that. But I wasn't here steeped in the history, and so I don't have that as context, right? And so
I could provide you a lot of context. And that's why like I said, I appreciate you being here. The president has been dodging me since May, but we will meet and we'll have that conversation in October. And that's more so because they knew that I was pushing for it. I had a hearing by myself in Jefferson City I believe it was last April actually, to where me and the interim president, or I guess it was the April prior, the questions that I posed were based off of my experience and sitting in a room with not only the chancellor, the provost who became the next chancellor, but also the deputy chancellor who became ultimately the interim system president. And even in their inaction, it brought us back to a point where I was then chairman and I wasn't going to let them get away with doing nothing or doing the status quo. So with everyone else that's starting new, I'll give you, we're starting on a
Appreciate that.
fresh footing.
Sure.
And it's not about, dinging you. I want to empower you and provide whatever resources and assistance we can to help you ultimately do the job that we need you to do. Because at least Mizzou is the flagship campus. The system is the flagship system in the state. So in that, they have a mandate to be a leader. I think they failed us, and we are choosing not to invest in other potential leaders such as Lincoln University. And from a diversity and inclusion standpoint, they definitely have the ability to do so, but we will not let Mizzou lose that in an effort to promote where we're trying to go.
Right.
And by nature of that, we also won't put in the adequate resources, at least on the land grant status with Lincoln University to turn them into that. So there's things that you can do from the system level to make sure that we get the appropriate attention that's well overdue in an effort to move us forward there. Because we can be a leader if we choose to. We haven't chosen to.
Well, I'm committed to this work. I think I'm battle tested. This is my 5th higher ed stop, and I've been at institutions that have had these type of opportunities in the past. And I've taken the strategic approach that has allowed it to be successful at other institutions. I also think there are some things that we've done and implemented already that I think are promising. So research is clear, students and faculty and staff, but particularly, let me just address students, are coming to our institutions with very varying lived experiences, different perspective of the world, and higher ed in heretofore hasn't really done the best job of equipping them with the tools to kind of navigate and negotiate that. At Mizzou, one of the more promising initiatives that resulted in the aftermath of the protests was the creation of something called Citizenship Mizzou, which is a mandatory kind of onboarding for first-year and transfer students that really engages those students with diversity and inclusion at the institution. The assessment of that has been really overwhelmingly positive by the students. They're incorporating that in their lives. Now to the initial question that I had about curriculum, we're trying to transfer that over. We have a new course now on race in America. That's a partnership with Kinder Institute that we're thinking it's going to get to that as well, in a partnership with Black Studies. And then Citizenship at Mizzou has also created something for faculty and staff called Citizenship 2 now, which just rolled off this fall. And it's great, again, to have our faculty and staff actually voluntarily participating. It's become something that's encouraged by leadership. So I think we have some things moving forward. And at the system, we have engaged this fall, actually this summer, in a new initiative that is promising called Social Justice Conflict Resolution, right? So it's also kind of recognizing, again, these interactions that our faculty and staff are having on a daily basis, and how do we infuse this a better lens from a social justice standpoint to equip them properly. So we brought in some of the leading people at the University of Massachusetts at Amherst to provide that. We had, I don't know, Emily, was it 25, 30 people from all the campuses participate, which is exciting. So we're going to do that annually. Then we're going to roll that for students as well, and then have some targeted areas that we see some of these conflicts coming up in. It could be res life or the like. So I'm excited about that. Yes.
I'm excited about that. 2 questions for you. This goes back to Missouri.
Proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Been quiet. This goes back to Missouri. They had a provost that was actually throwing racial epithets out at the students, right? So the chancellor knew, the president knew, everybody that was in upper administration knew, but it was little that they willing to do. So how would this actually interact with something like that? Let's say that we had a tenured professor, really hard to fire, throwing racial epithets out, not necessarily pinpointing the student, but just making the climate extremely uncomfortable for so-called minority students. So how would something like this play out?
Yeah, well, I don't think it would
Just-
be, in this day and age, I mean, particularly where we are, I think as a system and as an institution in MU, I just don't think that that would play out, be accepted as a practice. But from a social justice kind of conflict resolution standpoint,
You it wouldn't be accepted.
I think at this stage with the new leadership.
I was gonna say, that's where it happened.
Yeah, no, I'm saying now. I don't think it would be accepted now with the leadership. It's still hard for me from a context standpoint to kind of speak to the past part. But I think moving forward, I think there is an accountability level that's being implemented by the new chancellor, an expectation for sure by the president of the system, and I think a changing community culture that's just saying this is who we are now, and recognizing there are going to be different perspectives and differing views. We have to move forward in a way that is respectful. Is a way that isn't kind of creating these experiences. And if in fact it is, then we have to go through these kind of processes. Part of it may be an opportunity to raise awareness through this conflict resolution program. Part of it could be something that is more investigative nature.
Now, would that board of curators actually go through this process too?
Yeah.
I found them to be problematic.
Well, it's interesting that you said that. They have actually been really proactive in implementing diversity, equity, and inclusion education for the Board of Curators, and so rolled that out this summer. I'm excited. These are things that are what we would consider plus factors at other institutions that would have a Board of Regents or a Board of Visitors, and in some places that aren't being done, at least that I've been. So I'm excited and encouraged, and I'm kind of using that as my stake in the ground moving forward, in a way that's reflective of the past, but kind of feeling that we're building a brighter future. And again, wanting it to be more collaborative, wanting it to take the important interests and perspectives that you all are sharing, so we can come back and just engage in important dialogue and be direct with it. This is helpful for me because I think as I've continued to interact with constituency near and far, I continue to gain an important context and perspective that I didn't have as someone that's new coming into this role. Just a few other things at the system level. Part and parcel of our diversity inclusion efforts can often revolve around search and selection processes, right? And so we're engaging our chairs, particularly on the academic side, and an exercise around equity mindedness with regard to our search and selection processes for our faculty. Again, just trying to name this stuff, trying to create opportunities to really engage and say, we often hear you can't find diversity out there, or we can't find them in the STEM, disciplines. And actually, when you unpack and look at the data, there is actually diversity that often enters a pool, it just doesn't come out of it, right? And so how do we engage them in equity mindedness that will really empower them to kind of certify those pools and be more engaged in the process? And so we are utilizing the Center for Race and Ethnicity at University of Southern California, which is kind of one of the leading areas in providing this level of education, and we're going to do it in a way that hopefully will be a train the trainer, and then we can kind of continue this education ourselves. So there are some efforts underway, and then the last thing I will say that I'm excited about, maybe most passionate about, is that we know that data revolving around young men of color continues to show a widening gap, right, with regard to, in general, the performance of women and men. I think that has special implications for young men of color and predominantly white campuses. And so we started to roll out an initiative in partnership with Dale Carnegie International that will provide both mentorship and important workshops to collegiate students in the 2nd through 5th year, but we also have rolled out 2 high school programs, one in Columbia and a building partnership in Kansas City, and we're hoping to do so in St. Louis, but we
So
haven't.
it starts the sophomore year or the second year?
That's exactly right,
Cool.
yeah.
So
Through the 5th year.
Through the 5th year.
The
So,
first year, it drops off.
that's right. So we're utilizing that hopefully as a motivating factor for first-year students to want to participate. But we're also building their soft skills, interpersonal communication skills with Dale Carnegie. And so I'm really excited about the partnership. It's an initiative I started out in Rochester that I'm bringing here. And so at any rate, I'm excited about the prospects of that. But we have all of our campuses except S&T participating this year. And then we have about 50 high schoolers from Columbia, and we have strong interest in building into Kansas City as a statewide chapter.
So what I'd like, if you could provide me, or the committee rather, we want to see what data you're collecting.
Okay.
Because in that,
Yeah.
we can look at data and it can come out good and it could, but if we know, because I know there are some subtle changes happening on campuses. When we brought in 2 of the individuals from the University of Missouri, I was looking to see what our remediation rate was, and that's the number of students that are going in not at the college level and have to take courses below, and they couldn't come up with the number because we don't look at remediation, we call it something else. I also know that we are potentially changing the name of the academic retention services at the University of Missouri Columbia, which would make it harder for me to be able to track the amount of effort that's going into retaining the African American and minority students that we bring there. So if that's happening and you don't know about that, then it undermines the ability for you to do what you've been brought here to do, and then it also undermines our ability to be able to provide the ultimate accountability and to do what we need to get rid of who we need to.
It's a good point. That got unveiled yesterday. I think I can articulate reasons why they changed their name.
What's the name?
The Center for Academic Success and Excellence, CASE. And I think the reason why is, and my dissertation was based on this, and we did something similar at RIT. In part, academic retention services and the previous center that I used to oversee had a level of deficit-based language used to it, to your point. So many of the students, primarily students of color that are accessing it, were kind of told, you're not up to stuff, you need these remedial services to ultimately be where you need to be successful. And it didn't build self-efficacy, didn't build confidence with the students. It was a stigma attached to it. And I think the literature is suggesting, man, if we can use more asset-based language, if we can use more positive, that our students will rise to the occasion. So I did my dissertation on this at RIT, changed the name to the Multicultural Center for Academic Success, instituted a requirement for scholarship recipients. These were the same. Rochester, second in the nation in concentrated poverty, 42% graduation rate, 5 and 9% for African American Latino males. These were a population of people that folk were giving up on. We took those students in, used an asset-based approach. Those students are outperforming the general population of the students at the university now, over a 3.0 GPA, 90-something% persistence rate. And one of the subtle changes was trying to academically and socially connect these students, create the sense of belonging. Part of it was saying, look, we're not going to don't come into the center and say that they need all of these services just to get up to speed to be with the other students. We're going to build, we call these students scholars when they came in, and said we want to tweak just some of the amazing skills, talents, and abilities that they had, and they rose to the occasion. I think that's what he's trying to do. We're actually partnering with Freeman Grabowski, one of the longest standing presidents of color at University of Maryland, Baltimore County. He has a key program called the Meyerhoff program that measures their students of color by how many MD, PhDs they're producing. They're going to consult with us, so we're sending Donnell Young and Academic Retention Service team there, and then they're going to come here. And so we're trying to be intentional about it. And that's not even necessarily under my purview, but I'm just dedicated and passionate about it. The other thing that we will do then is share with you the framework so you can look at the data metrics that we're looking at and asking for. If there are others that you think we should be putting in there, you want to see, just let me know. And we will put those and add that in there so that the next time we report on that to you, we'll make sure that that metric that you're trying to identify is in there. Because I just want to make sure you are as informed as you want to be. And that I think it's pretty detailed, but it may be missing something that you're seeking, and that's not a problem. We'll make sure that it's in there.
Gotcha. So in that, you said it's not under your purview. Whose purview? Direct, but I would think it would be indirect. But
Right.
if I'm wrong, then I'm just wrong.
Yeah, it's under undergraduate studies. It's under Jim Spain. His purview. So the social justice centers, that portion of Donnell Young is under my purview. And when the position was created, it just wasn't created that way. It has been under my purview in other areas. It's just not here. And so we're just taking a collaborative approach. And I'm no less passionate about those constituency and wanted to support them.
Right. And the only thing is that you can only focus on what you can, and if your direct responsibility is something else. But that's why questions of how we structure things and operate is a whole different conversation. Because I do know that the budget that's been provided to what is formerly ARS has been reduced over the past decade. And if we are bringing, I mean, it's nice that I'm speaking in terms of Mizzou because that's my personal connection, but if that's the flagship, that dictates how we operate at the other campuses to a certain extent, to a certain extent.
Sure.
And in that, it makes sense to go ahead and allow the students that, are full Pell eligible or whatever to waive tuition. But if we haven't created the systems that will allow them to succeed, if we haven't invested in those systems and like I said, it's been reduced over 10 years, and that's not under your direct purview, then how do we change the climate and bring the students in and ultimately retain them? I mean, just changing the climate itself doesn't work without the systems in place and the funding in place.
Right.
And even to say that, well, most of our students are out-of-state students, and that's real dollars to us that we only charge them in-state and we're losing, that you can't really count that
Right.
because you made that decision. But it's because now you are trying to attract students that you lost because of inaction. And that's both from the system level and the campus level. I guess a question in this is,
Well, can I just say one thing?
Go
'Cause
ahead.
you hit the nail on the head with this one. This is exactly the argument I used at RIT. So I came into a role there. They had a scholarship that they were very proud of that provide full tuition scholarship for students, but they didn't have those support mechanisms in place for the students. So the average GPA of those students was a 2.36. This is the same center that I took over. And so to your point, I said, we need to make sure we have this asset-based approach. We need to have this system and structure in place. And initially I got pushback. We had enrollment management that said, well, if we do that, and we make this a requirement for these students, they won't accept the scholarship. And I said, well, there's no evidence to support that. So I said, why don't we do this? We'll do a pilot. You split the incoming class in half. You give me any of the students you want to. Let me put them through this process that I'm proposing. Let's just compare their GPAs at the end of the fall semester. We did that. The students had this structured level of support that academically, socially connected them, used asset-based language, had a 2.86. The ones that didn't still had a 2.36. So that's exactly why I'm invested in it. That's exactly why I'm passionate about working with. I didn't know the history again of the potential loss of funding over a 10-year period, but I do know in my purview or out, I'm dedicated to that population of students. It's been my dissertation, and so I've told Donnell Young I'm in it to win it. I'm collaborative, and we are going to put funding in it. We're going to put resources. We're going to leverage this so we can build the program that creates a level of sense of belonging, builds a self-efficacy, and turns this around. And if it's additional resources, then I can, if I can use a metric-based approach, I can then lobby for that. And I think that's what I did there, and at least to show the impact, because I'm not able to, right now I'm not able to show that.
Yeah.
But if I can show the impact of this on student outcomes, it's difficult to refute, and I know I can get resources based on that.
sure, well, do you not think it would be possible, and this isn't one of the questions I was going to pose, Representative Smith, did you have something too?
No, go ahead.
Okay. It's my thought, I've seen this raise $1 billion time and time again, at Mizzou at least. Can we not raise or, pull on the corporate donor strings and pull together the money to do that before we get there in an effort to get there? Because once you have the money and you put it in place, we will get the results?
Yeah, I think you're right. We've just brought in a development officer that we share with student affairs. She's lining up meetings for me now. But part and parcel of that is, in the past, a development office might say, well, people don't give to support diversity. In this case, my argument is, would people give for people to join and be part of a Tiger Nation, but not have the resources to do so? And the answer is all day long, right? And so if we can articulate a vision around the support mechanisms we have, I think we can. I think, to your point, we just have to be intentional about building support around it. And I'm confident we can do that in working in collaboration, with development office and enrollment management.
Right. I really think we could do it. I've talked to individuals that have attended HBCUs in the past, and I know how heavily they recruit. And if it provides them a pipeline of trained leaders, then why would they not do it? Because some of them do pay to be able to recruit on campus, or there's some affiliation with the university where they provide some type of support. But opening up that network, if you will, only provides additional opportunities for success to use the skills that you're hopefully imparting in the students that you're trying to attract and hopefully retaining.
And I'm passionate about, part of it for me is just, being new to this role, I actually don't know all of the philanthropic spaces that I can go and share and what I think is an important and valuable message. So just kind of lining those ducks up now in the hopes to be able to just get in front of additional people to be able to share this message and hopefully get support.
Gotcha. The last question I have before I get to Representative Smith, we had a legislative oversight committee that dealt with the issues. I don't know if it was changes to the system or changes to Mizzou. You don't recall that? It was Mizzou. It was the 5. Who's here from Mizzou?
Just me, really. Well, Emily's at both Mizzou and the system, just like me.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, well, it's you then. In that, I've been told that that group did not meet with faculty. And if we're going to change anything, I mean, the students come and go. I actually was just in D.C. with Peyton, the former president. Yeah. And I had a conversation, or actually we had a conversation with the Black Caucus and the leadership of Mizzou and others the spring before that fall. And I told them how the university works. They act as though you tell them a problem and then they work on it, or they make you feel like they're working on it, and then you ultimately get into your student studies, you leave, and then the other student experiences that, and then it's a new problem to the university, and that's how they get away with not making progress, on that. But if we're trying to set up things, and I know that was a legislative deal as opposed to your deal, but we still participated in it. And anything actionable that comes out of that is misinformed because, at least from the people I've talked to, they didn't talk to faculty. Or they talked to the faculty that gave them the responses that they want. Because you said was, I forget how you said it, was measured is.
What gets measured gets done.
Right. But if we're measuring, or if we're speaking to the people that says that the viewpoint that we want, communicated is done, then, I mean, like, I would have been the student, and I did participate in the climate study. And I gave them everything I could, and I expected everything to come from that, and then I still didn't see it. That's why I am as hard on the university system as I am today, because I spent and wasted my time doing that as a student leader who dealt with the real issue. And we had a packed audience with the leadership there because one of my members was called the N-word at Mizzou while just doing their job. So you can't do that for 15 years and then expect for me to play nice with you. It's not happening.
Right.
But in that question, we also have to be intentional about what we do, what we say. I believe even the chancellor at UMSL blamed the lack of international, or the dip in international enrollment after Ferguson, on Ferguson. But then when I met with them, I had a plan of things that we could do, and they said they were already doing a lot of it, and they're the anchor institution, and that wasn't reflected, one, in the statement. Secondly, it wasn't reflected in what we see in the community and how that operates. I apologize if I'm stepping on your toes, Representative Smith, speaking about UMSL, but to be the anchor institution means that hopefully Normandy School District doesn't, become unaccredited. Hopefully Ferguson doesn't happen, because there's a lot of community connections and whatnot. But I think we just have to be intentional about what we do and what we sign on to or don't sign on to, and what we communicate. And every chance I get to either show that we're just doing stuff for PR, for other purposes, I'll use it every time, only because I want to force you to do what's necessary to give us the real results that we require at this point.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm one that I appreciate your forthrightness, your candor. I appreciate your directness with regard to this subject matter, and I'm here to serve. I'm dedicated. I knew what I was signing up for when I came here, but I also believe that this is a good community, that there are new people in place that are committed to this work, and quite honestly, if they're not committed to transformation, then I'm the wrong person for the job, and so I need to start looking. But I'm committed to moving forward in a way, and your point is a good one. I mean, you're right. What gets measured gets done. But if you're ultimately finagling the metrics, right, that you're utilizing to have maybe a more positive reflection than a real one, then you're right. That can absolutely impact it. I don't think that's where we are now. I'm committed to moving this thing forward, and I'm also committed to already the valuable input you've given me, but to working hand in hand to be able to provide you in a very transparent way with all the information I have that I'm working with and how we're attempting to move this work forward.
Right, and I appreciate that. I can sense it, and I mean, like, we know how people operate in these hearings, but I at least feel that at ease with you We had a previous individual that did say all of the right stuff, and then ultimately, either the university wasn't doing what it's supposed to, so they left the position. Not your specific
Right.
position, but it's someone we dealt with, and we hope that that doesn't happen, because that means that we have to turn up the heat even more on the system. Because if the system has the flagship and is supposed to be a leader, then it's more than even saying it's our time to lead. It's been our time to lead. It's been required that you lead, but we failed. Representative Smith?
Not to, you've covered a lot. You've covered a lot. With the stuff that I wrote down there, I was sitting there scratching,
Hey,
scratching a
We
lot
leave
of
no
it
stone
off,
unturned.
Right, you didn't. But as Chairman Curtis just put it, we've had riotous folks come across, and that's kind of the frustrating part about it a little bit, because a lot going on and changes happen, and then you end up kind of doing the same thing over and over again. And I like to believe that it's not, an intentional sort of thing.
Right.
Just keep moving the characters, and then we keep moving the personnel, and we then continue to essentially do nothing. But I know as school as a whole, there's I don't know, I don't like the term like rebranding, because it's like you're selling something. I think there's a deeper term. I just can't find the word right now. It needs to happen. I've got family members that are at multiple campuses within the system. I've got tons of friends. I think I'm the only one, but when we graduated, they didn't go to Mizzou. But even like talking with them and their experiences, and kind of, this is a rough measure, but trying to measure, you've been in a lot of different universities, measuring the homecoming experience. And I'm using this as a rush.
Sure.
Because the folks I know really ain't going back.
Right.
We know a lot of few of the folks, same folks who it was just the feeling they got when they were there, and the things they felt from the management or the administration, administrators at the school. It was like, hey, I went to school there, I got the degree, and that's it. And I compare that to my European colleagues, and they can't wait till it rolls around. It was the best thing, since sliced bread that ever happened to them, and we can't wait to put that tiger tail hanging out the trunk to head up there. And it's kind of like these two worlds of people that went to the school at the same time. And I think, hopefully with your work and new leadership in the system, that can change. It'll take time, but hopefully that can change, and you all can start to, I know enrollment is down, and it's not just due to, kind of what happened before. I think a lot of it has to do with internationally with the administration that now sits in the president's seat, but I'm not going to get too into that, because it's folks who just don't want to come here and go to school anymore because they don't know what's going to happen. But I think that your energy is good. You seem to be into it, and you're coming with like a clean slate. So it was a whole different line of questioning that we may have had it been a different individual come, and maybe that'll get addressed on a later thing. But I just hope we can be helpful to you as much as possible to get Mizzou, and not just Mizzou, just the system back on track. There's a myriad. There's a ton of issues, student safety and other stuff we'll pick up on another date. But getting the flagship university system back to where the flagship university system, is kind of supposed to be. And then from my point of view, like you mentioned before, I'm fortunate to have the University of Missouri St. Louis in the district that I represent. But I want to see the university, even though I'm partial to UMSL, I want to see the system develop and continue to, put out world-class students of all different backgrounds from all different areas, and having people not skip over.
Right.
Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
You've seen what's going on there, and skip it over. And that comes to faculty too.
Right.
Because there was, a situation where some faculty may or may have not done things, and faculty wants to feel that the university has their back,
Right.
and not, caving from the outs, the external pressures.
Right.
So mine was more of a statement than a question.
Sure.
So,
But you bring up a really good point regarding, and I've seen this nationwide, particularly at least predominantly white institutions, a lack of multicultural alumni engagement, right? This lack of understanding that your multicultural alumni have had often very different experiences than their majority counterparts. And we haven't done a great job of engaging them. I was at RIT and I made the statement to the Board of Trustees there that the message that we're sending is that we didn't think there was a connection between your multicultural alumni and philanthropy, because if we did, we wouldn't leave that money off the table, right? And when I went out and met with many of the multicultural alumni, they said, look, I haven't been contacted since I graduated 15, 20 years ago. I mean, that's a shame on us proposition. I dare say that the same opportunity potentially exists some of our campuses within the system, and so I've been pushing that envelope. I've raised my hand and said I will go be with any of our alumni to re-engage, and we're working on creating an opportunity for them to come back so that we can just focus on them and just thank them and re-engage them with students using even video conferencing, because many of the students that are here don't know that they're alumni in fields that look like them.
right.
We need to connect them, and there are some great opportunities that are out there that other institutions are utilizing to bring them and engage them. And regardless of the experiences, I've almost always found, maybe 99.9% of the cases, that alumni will re-engage with students, particularly students that look like them, that they care about, even if they had a bad experience. If anything, to help with the student chart a path so that they are more engaged. And so I just want to be able to bring and encourage our alumni to do that. The other thing that I'm encouraged by, and I think Deborah and other CDOs have enlightened me to this prior to my arrival, I don't think there was as a collaborative spirit and approach from system with the other campuses around diversity and inclusion. And I think we've really worked hard to establish that with UMSL and UMKC and Rolla. And so I appreciate my colleagues for giving me support there, but I've tried to be intentional with regard to that because, again, we just have to have that spirit to be strategic and moving forward to support each other, but quite honestly, to move the needle on some of these efforts. So.
Definitely necessary, and I'll say I know a number of notable alums from Mizzou specifically, and everybody's willing to reach back. And while I won't go back to homecoming, there are a number of individuals that are, but in the 3-page document that we gave to Dr. Middleton with regard to charting a 25-year plan to be a leader, from a diversity inclusion perspective, it did talk about establishing those alumni relationships to connect them, because if they see it, I mean, that's a better rebranding opportunity than anything,
right.
Because the people want to connect with people in the field, because why do you go to college?
Right.
You don't go to pay the money and then, not have a job. You go
Right.
to pay and then move up and, have a successful life.
Right.
But that's why I'm wondering, I guess.
Although you would never come back, would you ever, if students wanted to just hear about your path or hear anything else, would you actually participate in a video conference? Would you do a Skype, do anything? So the comfort of your own home, if students just said, we would love to.
No, I don't have an ego, and no, I would not do that. I'm joking.
Oh.
No, but I know a number of individuals that I could definitely connect you
Okay.
with. I wouldn't want to do that just because I'm soft to a certain extent, and I'd rather keep the hard exterior so I can keep focused on accountability right now.
Fair enough.
But
fair enough.
I have friends that I can connect you with
Great.
that will do it, that are,
Great.
you know some of them, they've been in touch.
Great. And I have not seen the 3-page.
I'll send it to you.
Okay,
Yeah.
great.
But it just had a list of things, but I'm curious as to know what the structure is for your department or your, everything under your purview,
Sure.
because some things that I guess from my student experience and from dealing with these issues the past, 2 years, and it really started. The only reason I can still do this today is because the leadership came down and spoke with the Black Caucus at the end of session, and that's where I gave the entire recounting of what happened and what didn't happen. And I specifically told Peyton and his vice president, I said, you have to do this. You have to write down the goals and everything. You have to write down what action started, where you left off, and pass it off to the next group of student leaders, because that's the only way we can have continuity to get accountability. And then we just recounted that conversation in DC, and he shared with me some things, and I feel like the university used him And I mean, it forced him to have to pay some things out of pocket and finish his last 6 hours in DC when he was there, as opposed to, so like, I didn't know that, but I hadn't seen him. And I spoke with him. I said, hey, I was just waiting on the call because I told you how it works. But one of my interns that I had is Danielle Walker. She led the protest at Mizzou's campus, and she was the intern the year before as well. And I told her everything about Ferguson. So I'm sharing everything I can with the people to make sure we have the change. I can't get change alone, or the committee can't get it, but we'll provide the info. But I'll share that with you. But the only point in saying it is we just... I need you to do what you're supposed to do, and I'm not saying that you won't.
Sure.
That's a personal request from me, because that's the only way we're going to get there. People can say the right things and stay for 3 years, and once that new job opportunity comes, they're gone.
I know.
And that's not what we need. I'd love to be able to call myself a tiger again, or to be proud of the system. I mean, really, the slogan should be that we are the flagship. And then we are, and then, show the identities and show how you can connect to the identities.
Right. No, you're fair.
I'm passionate about it.
Right.
I just have to take a different stance in order to push us forward because it's long overdue. So, any other questions, committee? Do we want to hear from the representation from UMSL?
UMSL has something to say, of course. If not,
There are 3 other campuses that are part of the university.
yeah, I heard.
Is Lincoln University here? I'm just saying, that's the one I'm looking at. So what we didn't discuss today, and this is just a purview, and we're nearly done, unless you all do have anything. Campus safety was what we were also supposed to talk about. We had a hearing, I believe, in April or May where we discussed the sexual assault at UMKC. Because I talked with the students and such, I know that there was a sexual assault that happened at Lincoln University this weekend as well. So in terms of improving climate and providing diversity, inclusion, and equity, going back to having those systems in place to where you can not only be attracted to the school, and the financial pieces that come with it, but you have to be able to succeed. And if the academic support system is there or not there, that does something. But if the safety net is not there, and I'm still surprised that the chancellor of UMKC couldn't answer the one simple question as to who monitored the dorm room in which the young lady was raped in. And I haven't gotten all the details on Lincoln University's incident from this weekend, but Senator McCaskill went after the university and opened up the Title IX investigation. We have an open civil rights office with the Department of Education case right now, just trying to push for more change from everywhere.
Right.
We have that, but it's surprising that with all the attention from a U.S. Senator, that we find ourselves in a situation where we're still dealing with it, and we'll always deal with it to a certain extent. But just like I want the change from an diversity, inclusion, and equity perspective, I want it from a safety perspective. And I'm saying that as a man, because men can equally be assaulted or, put in harm's way just as well. But for any other, I'd love for my niece to go there. Love to go to any of the campuses. I'm partial, I guess, to Raleigh at this point, but only because I want to get her into tech.
Sure.
But if she's not going to be safe there, there's no way that I would say do it. So we have to do double duty, but I think you should be a part of that, and I can't put everything on you. So whoever's in charge of that, we need to be looking, because we have to provide the safety. Without safety, you don't get the education, and then without the education safety net, then you just leave college with debt.
Right.
Debt and memories, and hopefully some good ones, but mostly bad ones until we change things. But we'll save that for the October hearing, because that is just as important. And yeah, we got some issues to address. But to the extent that you can, if those things fall under, or if there's a way to set up a working group to discuss those as, from a holistic perspective, like all of it touches on, the success of students.
Right.
If it's just about keeping money, you could keep bringing in the students, but that just means that the retention rate will be what it is, and we'll just start publishing the retention rate. But, you know, even in bringing in all those students, if you lose them all the next year because of safety or because of the lack of the academic safety net, then it's going to be just as damaging as the protests and other issues that cause these hearings.
Right, and I don't want to speak out of turn, but I think from a civil rights and Title IX standpoint, we could actually create a working group that can address that for this group, and that's probably the more informative group to do that. From the campus, Emily oversees that. Some of that process from us from an equity standpoint at the system, but Deborah's very connected to all of our CDOs, and we have Title IX representatives as well. I think that would probably be even more informative than asking the president chancellor. They're in the know.
Yes.
I know from the accountability standpoint.
Yeah, that's all it is. I need him on the record because then I can hold him to it.
Absolutely.
And that's why he hasn't visited with me today.
But I think that they would be very informative for you, and we can definitely organize that if that would be helpful.
And like I said, you don't necessarily have to talk with me. You can have the conversation, send us the info.
Oh, okay.
I just wanted to put it out there and any other ideas so that if I know you got a lot on your plate.
Sure.
But from my perspective, we can't get you, the state funding is something totally different.
Right.
But there are definitely other things that can and, will be done that dictates, what level of funding you get. But to the extent it hits the students before funding does,
Okay, yep.
that's more important than other things.
So my deliverables on that, I have that. We'll work on that and either try to get you the information or set up a time for them to, and then I want to get you the IE framework with the metrics so you can look at that. So
And I'll send you the 3-page deal
Perfect.
and a list of at least the alums that I'm connected with that I know would be more than willing.
That'd be great. Thank you.
That's the easy thing. I mean, if you put out the call, that's one thing I can say.
That's
You
great.
put out the call, they will answer.
Right.
But that's when accountability comes in, and you still can't just cherry pick the ones you want to deal with because they're pro.
Right. That's right.
You have to take some of the other ones that are going to help push us forward because the only way we move forward is together.
Great perspective. You're absolutely right.